I just played through Sonic Origins Plus in a day while recovering from gallbladder surgery, making it the second game that I've completed with one less organ in my body. This is important for you to know. The phenomenon of the original Sonic the Hedgehog video games feels increasingly bizarre the more that I tend to think about them. You think this too, right? Like, people love these games. We all know that. Some of the strangest and sickest people on the internet sure seem to, but how good are they actually as video games? That's a thing that I have been pondering the past few days. Let me tell you this, growing up, if I ever had a friend that played both Mario games and some Sonic games, the answer was always that the Mario games were better. What exactly is holding Sonic back from being considered critically great across the board? It just seems like there has to be some kind of issue here. Sonic has got to be one of the most beloved franchises that has so few games that ever actually make anyone's top list. Mario 3, Mario World, Super Mario 64, even the newer ones are always hitting people's top 10 lists, but how often does a Sonic game ever really make it there? This is something that we're going to be digging into with these classic Sonic games. So real quick, we're covering Sonic 1, CD, 2, and 3 and Knuckles. Each game is included in the Origins collection. At the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts on these games as well as talk about the collection itself. The Sonic games have a ton of real momentum smashing parts where the games just hit a brick wall. My dad, as I was growing up, not susceptible to the in-your-face 90s attitude in the marketing, always complained about how the character, Sonic, could move so fast, but then when you actually did so, you would instantly run into something and end up losing a life. That's a real surface level take, and I also feel that when Sonic is at its best, it offers multiple levels in which you can engage with the game depending on your skill and memorization of the stages, but he was not exactly wrong either. It's a broad, sweeping generalization that does a disservice to true criticism. I'm sure he would love to hear me tell him this now, but there's something there to be said. I'm going to get the most blatant annoyance of all of these Sonic games out of the way up front, the special stages. I am convinced, and please tell me if you disagree, that nobody actually likes any of these. At best, they are tolerated. Sonic 1, you're in a spinning maze with a lack of control. It's really annoying because you can fail this thing almost immediately. After about 2 of these things, you have to go in with a memorized plan, or else you are going to fail. There's no great way to get proper practice in on these stages through normal play. And so you get to a point where you're just like, hey, I'm going to allow myself to fail so that I can get on with the actual game. Screw Supersonic, who cares? With that, with the inclusion of these special stages then, it just puts a halt on the game itself. Why even bother try playing them at that point? Sonic 2 has the half pipe. Okay, everybody loved the Pseudo 3D, which looked great back on the Genesis in 1992. Visually, it was really cool way back then. Not so much anymore. I don't know what anyone's excuse is at this point. Once again, after the second half pipe, you better start memorizing these things. How you're going to get the chance to memorize them all, I have no idea. Spikes pop up on you, barely giving you any kind of warning, and so good luck reacting to these things. Then, even if you do, Tails gets hit and loses all the rings that he's been collecting, screwing you, and you're going to end up failing once again. You have to play these things not only thinking about your character, but how your follower is on a delay and how he's going to react as well. It's really kind of annoying. The ever-amazing Sonic CD isn't any better. Again, it had a cool 3D effect for the time, but it's hard to play with precision. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is slightly more tolerable because at least those stages are easier, but that isn't exactly a glaring recommendation. They still aren't that fun to play. Moving on, sometimes I wonder if the Sega Genesis would have been even bigger and made a stronger impact up front if it wasn't for Marble Zone in Sonic 1. Man, does this level just hit you like a truck, slowing down the game immensely. Here you're either punished for going too fast, kind of like what we just talked about, or you can't move fast because you're pushing these slow and heavy blocks, you're slowly moving over lava, and you're waiting around for other nonsense to occur, not actually doing much playing of the game. You got 3 long levels of this too. At least they feel excruciatingly long, and they all feel exactly the same. Zone 3, Springyard Zone, the start of the entire casino feel to the Sonic series, feels really cool up until then you hit the 4th zone, Labyrinth Zone. This one is just universally hated, right? The dreaded, awful Sonic water stage. No one likes this. You don't like this, do you? For whatever reason, this level was so prolific that the developers just had to include this, really, I should say, recreate this zone in Sonic CD with Tidal Tempest. Thanks, guys. I loved that one. Such a great level to take inspiration from. The and Knuckles portion of Sonic 3 and Knuckles had a miserable zone with Sandopolis Zone. I hate these kinds of levels. Dealing with slow-moving sand, pushing heavy crap at a snail's pace once again, the lights going out, ghosts. Ghosts appearing in a Sonic game, and annoying puzzles all over the place. Sonic and Knuckles really was kind of a buzzkill for the Sonic franchise, right? I remember being in straight up denial as a kid, but it really kind of feels to be the case. All right, it's time to go back to Sonic CD. Is this the most overrated Sonic game in existence? I thought that I loved this game as a kid. It's got this groovy late 80s synth rock vibe that reminds me of a direct-to-video anime OVA from the same time period, which I wouldn't have discovered for several more years, which is amusing because the soundtrack was actually redone for the American version by the American side of Sega, while Japan and Europe got the original Japanese version. Both soundtracks are pretty cool, but man, did I think the American version rocked. I still think so. The opening animation of Sonic running, which I guess is technically some of the first anime I've seen, had a matter-of-fact, non-Saturday morning cartoony feel that nothing else compared to at the time. Which, yeah, it's really silly because it's just a couple minutes of Sonic running. The actual game itself features an expanded color palette that would be subtle to a young audience that doesn't really think about these things, but it still leaves a great impression nonetheless. It feels like maybe Sonic got aged up by just a couple of years in maturity, like the Sega CD was somehow unlocking Sonic's potentiality ever the more by having a game just feel slightly more adult, even though it still really is a game that's for the palate of a child primarily. It was still really cool at the time. Getting into the actual game design itself, the past and future nonsense, while yes, optional, ultimately feels like a waste of time. To get the best ending in the game, you're supposed to go back into the past to find hidden robot generators and destroy them. Going slow to find stuff in Sonic games is always an exercise in misery, and it's no different here. I also had no clue about any of this when I was young. Neither did anyone else that I knew have any idea of what the point of all of this past and future stuff was. And I even just reread the entire instruction booklet for the American version and the European version, and there's no explanation on any of this in there. What is going on, Sega? You can tell that tons of people online have been confused over the years as well with just a simple Google search. Somebody screwed up something here in explaining what the heck you're supposed to be doing. Sonic Origins makes a change to these games that the purist in me hates, but I actually appreciate a lot. The main mode of Sonic Origins gives you infinite lives. In this collection, whenever you would get a free life, you collect instead a special coin that allows you to retry special stages which is really nice, or you can spend it in the museum to unlock music, illustrations, or movies. Sonic 1, which I don't think many people bother even trying to play to the end, gets brutal in its difficulty and stops being fun with how easy it is to die. Even in Sonic 2, if you haven't prepped for the final fights of this game because you didn't train for them in the stage select, which is what I had to do way back, they can easily catch you off guard and instantly take out any remaining lives or continues that you have, because they can be a bit confusing to go about when you first get to them. Whereas back in the Genesis days, you basically were doing a run on these games to see how far that you could get. With the newer game design philosophy, it's much easier to just hang out with these titles and play them without being so on edge towards the end. It's really a different experience, and it's not a bad one. So with Origins, what else does it do for you? The widescreen visuals for each game, with these stages naturally extended beyond the 3:4 aspect ratio, is actually really nice for modern TVs. I appreciated it a whole lot more than I originally thought that I would, and that alone made it worth a purchase, even though I've already bought collections with emulated old Sonic games at least 3 times now on various older systems. The new opening and ending animations for each title here with the Origins collection was a major letdown. Come on, guys. Nothing comes close to what was offered with Sonic CD. And the animation there is antiquated now, but even still, the animation here, while of a higher resolution, just isn't as fun or exciting. We aren't getting well choreographed scenes here. They're choppy, straight to the point in just being serviceable, and unmemorable. They're actually kind of lame, and when I started to replay some of these levels after my first run through the game, I started skipping them because they just weren't that interesting. I still, though, did not skip Sonic Boom at the beginning or the end. That was still worth it. For Sonic Origins Plus, there's the Game Gear titles as well. It's basically got them all. That's cool, but this is still not the ideal way to play most of these games. Check out my Game Gear video for additional thoughts on this, but for the majority of these titles, the superior Sega Master System version, nowhere present in this collection, unfortunately, would be the way to play them due to the wider viewing area. These games here, especially on a modern television, feel way too claustrophobic to actually enjoy at this point. There's also a mission mode here. Mission modes in these kinds of games, like in the Mega Man collections, kind of put me off, but I found myself moderately enjoying these as I went for the Platinum Trophy. Amy Rose is now playable across all of the Sonic games, in addition to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, for all 4 of them here. Amy is okay. You know, it's nice to have another character to play as. She has a hammer attack that functions similarly to Sonic's shield attack in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It's great that we got her. Finally, what sucks the most about this collection is the subbed out music in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. There have been countless videos about the theoretical legal paralysis Sega is in due to Michael Jackson contributing to the original soundtrack and how Sega apparently just can't use it anymore. Because of all of this, the best music from the game was gutted out for alternative tracks that feel like some Casio child slapping keyboard parody. This is really bad and really takes a swing at these games where presentation is such a large portion of what makes these games enjoyable to play in the first place. If the new music can't be as good as or better, that is a major blow for ever really wanting to play these versions in place of a faithfully emulated version of the original. These original Sonic games are sloppy, messy, and kind of nutty. They've always been. These games are a ton of chaos. Sega was smart in giving you nearly unlimited hits that you can take as long as you're always sure to keep at least a ring on you. A trip through a Sonic video game is a trip through insanity. You're going to get hit, it's going to feel cheap, you're going to feel like you're never going to memorize these levels well enough to not get screwed over by something popping out at you, and you'll be continuously surviving on the edge edge as you scramble to pick up any remaining rings after taking damage. Sonic the Hedgehog does well in maintaining this scrambling feeling. It feels a lot less measured and strategic as compared to Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World. Sonic 1 feels like a beta for something that will eventually become so much better. If the game didn't have Sonic in the title, I would have never played it nearly as much as I have over all these years. When I have played Sonic 1, it has almost always felt like it was out of some sort of weird sense of duty, or like I'm trying to figure out just what exactly makes this game tick, and how can I bring myself to appreciate it as much as I've enjoyed 2 and 3. Sonic 2 is a visual and audio feast with iconic levels and just enough rawness to it to really make it feel like you're playing through something special. A lot of people say that Sonic 3 is technically the better game, but that they enjoy Sonic 2 more. However, I say that maybe Sonic 2 is the better game, and perhaps Sonic 3 is a little too rigid in what it's trying to be. Sonic 2 also introduces Tails, which you can have someone play on player 2. With platforming games previously, very rarely did you have the opportunity to get two people controlling a character at the same time. This is something that people poke fun at today, and that Tails really just feels kind of ridiculous to play because he'll just fling off the screen. People will try to say that player 2 hardly contributes to the experience, but these people are missing just what made it once so special. You don't have to take turns anymore, and that alone is awesome. But a more experienced player could carry the game too, if necessary, if one player was really good and then the other one just wasn't up to snuff. It's sort of like a little buddy mode that just works. However, also, on top of all of that, if you and your buddy are good enough and in sync enough, it won't matter who is playing Sonic or Tails. It is possible to play these games in a way where it feels like a true two-player co-op video game. If you can get to that point, it just is unparalleled in how cool it feels. For Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the Sonic 3 levels are all really good with stage design that feels more purposefully constructed. The Sonic and Knuckles portion, where Sonic 3 was initially released separately from Sonic and Knuckles, and then you could lock the two games together, literally plugging one cartridge into the other to make the full game. The second portion feels really hit or miss at times and really takes some of the wind out of the original trilogy's sails because the quality of levels just does not feel as good as what was in the earlier portion of the game. I've never really cared too much after the second zone in the Sonic and Knuckles portion. All of this said, there is still enough value in this title that if you've ever played these games growing up, or you're intrigued by these games, you like Sonic, you like 2D style video games, it's worth buying. The music situation for Sonic 3 makes this not the sort of archival or best version of the game that you could have, which is a real shame, but it's still a good way to experience or re-experience these old titles. I do recommend picking it up. So let me know what you think of Sonic Origins Plus. I liked this game. I picked it up for $40. It was fun. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. I have a few agitations, as I talked about, but it's still really cool. I still liked it. But I want to hear what you have to say, and also leave a comment. That really helps out this channel, as well as thumbs up this video. And if you absolutely loved everything that you heard, why not subscribe as well? Thanks for watching.